Hi, and I'm back with another video. I've been using these videos to focus on the Coma electronic field kit. In this particular video, I'm actually focusing on the Kilpatrick audio Phenol. One of the YouTube viewers said on my channel that it would be cool, since he also has a Phenol, to consider it and to do to do a video just on this instrument. So I thought it was an excellent idea. So I'm not going to actually take you through all the functions of the synthesizer. You can get very good videos online that have all sorts of information about the synthesizer by Kilpatrick Audio. It's, for me, a pretty amazing unit, and I noted in wanting to do this video that there isn't a lot of information out there via social media. I think that's one of the things you'll see in the synthesizer created music community, that there's a varying level of I wouldn't say interest, but just maybe potential that people have to present their gear, what they're doing with their gear, their sound experiments, their music on YouTube, on other video sites, or on Facebook and social media. So I wanted to do this in part because I'd like to see more of the Phenol users getting out there, maybe starting more user groups and providing inspiration. And one of the things you can do, I did initially with this synthesizer, was just go to YouTube to look for ideas for patching and for patches, basically, for creating sounds. Again, if you want to learn how to use the instrument, the manual is pretty good. It's a teeny bit short, so you might find some good tutorials in terms of the video stuff out there. So I'll take you through this patch and work through it, and I will actually put up at some point in this video a better version of this patch, because you could see I just took the patch sheet from the back of the PDF manual, and I found this patch and I found it pretty interesting, and I wanted to use it in this video. So that's the point of this. Now, if you have a Phenol, you can start off very quickly creating sound if you want to just get sound, of course. So we can, in this case, we have two oscillators, so we can go do the pitch in, and we could just take the sine wave out. And of course, you're not going to get sound until you patch to one of the two outputs. I have them panned in this video left and right in the mixer, and you can, of course, I just mention that because when you're listening to it, you might be able to hear. I'll patch, not in this patch, but in the one I'm going to do, the two oscillators left and right. So you can kind of just listen for that. I was going to say, what's cool about the Phenol is it really does require you to do things from the ground up. And we call it a semi-modular synthesizer because, of course, it has many of the characteristics of the modular community out there, the modular music community. The difference, of course, is you cannot bring in your own modules, right? You're limited to what is present here. Of course, I can patch in and out with my other CV gear. It does differ, the Phenol, say, from the No Coast by Make Noise, because there you have, if you follow the gold pathways, you have a device that's continually patching itself. If you just follow those, and then you could patch in and out of it, add to it, subtract, and so forth. So in this case, we have to make all our sound from the ground up. So anyway, the sine out into the oscillator, and then I can take, I guess I can take the ramp out and put it into input 1, and let's see, I can adjust the speed. What we're hearing is, let me turn the delay down. We're hearing the delay is kind of maxed there. And let me just check. Okay, let's pump this a little bit. I'm trying to adjust my audio and my music output here on my recording device, which I'll in post make sure they're in a good place, but let's just get our initial points here. Okay, so I just was showing you, you could do a patch here very simply, just using two cables. Okay, so we're just using the LFO, the sine wave out. Let's turn off. Okay, let's turn this off. And what I'm going to do is just take you through this patch. And so I will maybe You know what I could do? I've been told my videos are long, and I realize that. What I might do is, in post, as long as I'm not talking, right, I can speed up this video. But I will take you through this, and we shall see how it sounds. I was going to mention, so what I'll be doing is I actually recorded a little sequence, just some random notes using the MIDI input. I didn't show you that part. The sequencer is very simple, but it's pretty cool. It can record up to 500 notes. You can do, if you want to do spaces, you'd have to use an expression pedal, rest rather, sorry, spaces. But if you wanted to have your sequence have some silence in parts, you couldn't do that only with the MIDI keyboard. I guess I should be, maybe I won't speed up the video and you can fast forward if you want, but I should describe, I guess, what's going on here. So I'm going to take my initial sequence using the block here, the MIDI to CV, take the pitch out. That's going to control essentially my sequence, right, is going into the first oscillator. Then I'm also later going to be using, I found some cool abilities to use the speed and the FM level simultaneously. I'll do that later. So I'm taking the sine out into the FM in, and then I took the ramp output into the pitch in of oscillator 2. Sorry, bear with me here. Then I'm going to take the pulse output, and I'm going to route that into the second filter, the bandpass filter. I was experimenting today with the filters and getting some really, I thought, sonically interesting moments. The other thing I'm going to modify with that filter is I'm going to take the MIDI to CV, the mod out to modify the FM level, and I'll take the output of our filter 2, and that's going to go into the divider. And the divider is a really cool block here that allows you to essentially, kind of does what it says. It can take your signal, divide into 2, 4, or 3, and 6, and so you can get different rhythmic permutations, if you will, on the beat, depending on what you're playing with your sequence. Okay, and then I'm going to take the divider out into the input for our second mixer slot. And then coming over to filter 1, the low pass, the in, and we're going to come out of the main out from the first oscillator. So we're going to get essentially filtering with this first oscillator here, filter 1, and then, sorry, this is kind of the fun of the semi-modular CV world, is trying to make sense of everything. But yeah, then the pulse out from the same oscillator is going into filter 2. It's really hard when you look on YouTube and you try to create your own patches or get inspirations from patches that people have made, because depending on the color of cables, you can't always tell what's going where. If there's a spaghetti bowl of cables, you can't see everything. By the way, relative to the cables, I was trying to think of some good systems to use the color coding. I have quite a few. So I have the original Kilpatrick audio ones that ship with the unit, and then I bought some expansion packs. And I also bought these guys here, these scientific banana cables. They're essentially the same. They look a little different. And they're a teeny bit cheaper, but they work just as fine. And of course, they're both stackable. And one of the things that's cool about the Phenol is you can stack, of course, using tip-top audio cables on your other CV units, but this is, I think, really cool that you can stack. They recommend no more than 3 stacks for any port that you're going in or out of, and we'll use a couple of those when we stack. So sorry, I got distracted by patching here. Okay, so oscillator 2, take the output here, and we're going to go to the adder, and then I'm taking one of the outputs. I know I'm done because I have just, sorry, hit my lavalier there, but I know I'm done because I have just the right amount of cables, so I will not mess this patch up. We're going to take the output of the adder, and that's going to be our first input into channel 1 on the mixer, and then our last one is, I know it's from, because I've got 2 going in here, so we're going to stack this, and that's going to come out of our low pass filter, the output. Okay, so that's essentially the patch, right? We haven't heard any sound yet. One of the things I'll note, and I'll give you a patch sheet, is what I try to do on these is, in addition to drawing what's going where, the in and the outs, I also make some notes about, like, if I think there's another patch point, like I was thinking on one of these here with the mod out, I can also run that through the filter and the mod out, this yellow cable. Can also do some cool stuff with the envelope out. And in fact, I'm just thinking about, you know what, I'm actually going to do that now, so let me switch that, because I was doing this earlier and it sounded pretty cool, so we'll try that actually and experiment with that a little bit. And you'll want to read online. It's a little confusing with the 2 envelopes, which also double as LFOs. You'll want to read about, you know, how to get these to work. And this is the only part of the unit that's a little confusing, is you have to figure out the scaling, how it works on your 2 envelopes or LFOs. So the other thing I do on here is I make notes, like I want to do something later with the delay mix. So one of the things you can do is you can, of course, put the positions of whether it's 12 o'clock or 3 o'clock or whatever. And you can also make some notes, like I'll put an X on one of the pots if I think it's useful in combination with others. So like I said, I'm going to work with the LFO in combination with oscillator 1, FM level, and then also do a little bit with the delay mix. So what you're hearing today is I just have the stereo outs going from the unit, no other effects other than the delay that's built in on the Phenol. And as they mentioned in the manual, they make a point of saying that, you know, there's a particular character to this delay, so don't expect it necessarily to sound like some of the other delays out there. Okay, so where should we begin? We might just start with, I think we can start with the first oscillator. So we're already getting a pretty fat sound in this because I've stacked, as you might remember. Turn that down, that's the adder. So we have, again, the sound's being modified by the adder, which is this blue chord, and then we're also getting, of course, the effect from the filter. But we'll start sort of minimalistic because I think that gives you a sense of the character of the sound. And as we begin to build on it, as I bring in the other channel that you're going to hear in the other ear, because I have these panned opposite, I think you'll see how much experimentalism you can do with this unit. You also get a sense of how fat the sounds can sound. I mean, there are a lot of applications for this, not just in experimental sound design, which is maybe where I'm at with this particular device and maybe where you're at. You could also certainly use it for non-experimental and just create leads. You could create percussive sounds and so forth, and we won't do any of that today. But of course, the oscillators, you can tune them and just sort of have them where I want in terms of the frequency. Okay, and so maybe we could start with just working with the first filter to give you a sense sonically what's going on here. Okay, so it's a fairly minimalistic sound. Again, we're just going through the sequence. I can show you this trick here using the, again, we have the sine out going into the FM in, and this kind of creates some pretty interesting effects. And so what I like about that is I can use, you know, from a performance standpoint, I can use the two pots to impact one another, depending on how much of the FM. Get some pretty cool sounds. Okay, and then we go back to our sequence. So maybe we can bring in the second oscillator. Okay, so it's playing, check our levels here. A little fatter, and there are some reasons for that, right? We're using the filter here, and then we also have the divider adding to it. Now, I forgot with oscillator 1. Let's go back to oscillator 1, because I wanted to show you what this adder does to the characteristic of the sound. It really does quite fatten the sound substantially. And of course, what's going on with the patching here is that, in a sense, I'm referring to oscillator 1 and 2, but the two of them are working in tandem, right? So we're using one of the outs from oscillator 1 to control the pitch in oscillator 2, and then taking that output, throwing that into the adder here, and we get this really fat sound. And you can see it's just, or here, that's much thinner without it. So you really see the effect of that. Let's bring in the second oscillator. And we can work with the second filter a little bit. So you're also hearing in here the divider working. Turn down oscillator 1. And let's see if we patch. So you see we're coming out of the 6 versus the 2, which is what it was in. The 3 is kind of interesting. Go back to the 2. So that's what's cool about the Phenol, right, is you have the opportunity to constantly adjust your patch on the fly depending on what you want to try to do creatively. It's a great, for me, sonic device to allow you to do things spontaneously. A lot of people say with modular and semi-modular, if you don't notate your patches, it's going to be very hard for you to maybe recreate what you've done. But again, once you understand the architecture of what you're working with, I think it becomes fairly easy to do. You might lose some of the specific sonic characteristics you liked, and that's why it's, I think, worth using a patch sheet. But if you understand the architecture of how the Phenol works, it's pretty easy to create patches from scratch. We're working on our filter here. What I'm doing here, so I have the output of envelope 1, and that's going in the FM in on the second filter. So, you know, what's really cool is you don't just have your oscillators, you have the envelopes, the LFOs, the filters, and the level of interaction, like the permutations of number of interactions, seems infinite, right? If you just think about all the patch potentials. Let me turn off oscillator 1. I hear just what's going on with the envelope. The FM level back down. Earlier I mentioned the other patch point I liked was taking the mod out. You can try that. Yeah, so in any case, get the idea. I'm not using the VCAs in this patch. You know, one of the things I think with the Phenol is that you can easily eat up patch cables. So it's definitely a great idea to, you know, purchase a lot of these. You could easily go through 20, if not 30, depending on the sophistication of the patch that you're creating. Okay, and to close this up a little bit, maybe we'll bring back both of our oscillators where they were. So you see we have the sequence playing with both, and fairly fat sound. But I wanted to push, one of the things I found really nice sonically is to take, you know, this sequence, which has pretty clearly defined notes, and to just max out. I have the delay time set pretty low here, but we'll max out the delay mix almost at 100%, and you start to get almost like a drone quality, which I just find pretty interesting. So let's do that to show you how with just the effects bus we can quickly create something that's sonically quite, I think, quite interesting and exciting. So let's try that now. So delay mix, we're almost getting, you hear in both ears, right, the remnants of our two oscillators with the sequence playing, but now we're getting this like wave, almost a phasing wave effect with the sound that I think is really amazing. And it's like the sequences with the two oscillators are starting to distort and fade out at the same time. Just think it's sonically very interesting. And that's at max. Almost to me has a cello bowed type sound to it. It's just really just interesting to me. We can further modify it, of course. We could take maybe the random out. The other way you could think about patching is, in a sense, following a line. What starts, right? We start here with the MIDI sequence, the pitch out going into oscillator 1. I can affect it here as I'm doing with the LFO, and that sound continues to move on throughout the device via the oscillator, the two filters, the adder, the divider. So I mean, it's interesting, I think, when you get into the modular, semi-modular world, to think about sound in an entirely new way than you would if you're using VSTs on your computer, if you're using a workstation or whatever, for those that still use workstations. So we can modify a little more here, see what we get. I took the random out in the LFO. And so we're almost, I was thinking for a second there, we're getting our sequence coming back in, and the cello-y bowed sound in the middle. And now we're hearing, yeah, we are hearing it come back, aren't we? Open it up a little bit here at the FM level. This is pretty amazing. Just has like an aleatoric kind of sound patch. So what we're hearing is that cello-y sound, and in each ear we're hearing the remnants of the sequence, but of course with the random out of the LFO dialed about 12 o'clock in the FM level, pretty close to the same, we're getting this nice aleatoric high-pitched sound coming, and then we're still getting a very lower frequency sound in what's my left ear, assuming it's going to be the same ear for you. And we're losing that cello bowed sound, right? That's created from the delay. That's fading out as we increase our LFO effect here. Could get crazy here. just find that really pleasant. I don't know if you do, but that's quite pleasant to listen to. And what's cool here is, right, we're getting the sonic differentiation in each of the ears, in each of the outputs. We're getting a much higher frequency in terms of the blips, and then we're getting very low bass sounds in the other ear. All from the random out of the LFO. Okay, and for me, what is fun about working with the Phenol is you have these moments, right, where you can actually envision through patching a performance of sorts, right? I mean, you can take, depending on the patch you've set up, you can take the various blocks, your modules, and really have a go at it, a go of it in terms of creating sound. And of course, we're doing this all on one device, right, with a very simple delay, but effective delay. And if we hook this up to our other CV gear, if we hooked up to other effects, if we hooked up to the field kit and did some electroacoustic stuff, and really the sky's the limit. So for me, it's an opportunity to use something like the Phenol to really do some amazing sound experiments that I think are not possible, except, of course, in the modular and other devices out there, semi-modular devices. But it's not possible to do anything like this in a VST. I realize with Native Instruments Reactor, you can do modular stuff, and it's a great, I think, place to learn the understanding of the building blocks of modular and semi-modular systems. But there's nothing like getting your hands dirty and getting your hands on something like the Kilpatrick Audio Phenol. So that's it today, and again, I will put my patch sheet up for you so you can take a look at it. But it's a device that I think encourages you to explore and to take sound in some new, interesting, and indeed avant-garde directions. So hope you enjoyed this video, and check out other videos I'll be doing on any number of sound experiments and musical devices.